3. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the December 18, 2013 NIC Board of Trustees meeting. Would you all please rise and join the board in a pledge of allegiance, please? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We have a quorum. All of the trustees are ready and here. I don't know that anybody signed up as a guest, so we don't have any introduction of guests. So the next item on the agenda is a review of the minutes and approval. And has everyone had a chance to review the minutes, and are there any suggested revisions or additions or deletions? If not, we'll deem the minutes approved. The minutes are approved. We have no one signed up for public comment. This is about the fastest we've moved along so far in a long time. We're moving right into celebrating success, and we're going to have Laura Hill comment on the United Way campaign. Laura?
Good evening, Chairman of the Board, board members, and President Dunlap. Our Celebrating Success for December is a review of the recent United Way campaign, which we held during the month of November. The needs are great in our community, and after taking at least 1 year off from holding a campaign, we decided to reestablish that campaign this year. We kicked off our campaign, and I don't know, are the slides going to come up here? We kicked off our campaign with a pancake breakfast, which was hosted by President's Cabinet and a few of the division chairs. We provided all of the fixings for the pancakes, including the griddles, and we cooked pancakes for any and all employees who wanted to come, and even some students who ventured upstairs and enjoyed plenty of pancakes, which we had. This event, we raised $253.23 just purely by donation. That kicked our week off. The next event we had was a bake sale where employees baked all their finest goods. I am not a baker. I brought nothing. I can assure you it would not have sold. But we did raise another $738 in baked goods. We had about 6 tables of food downstairs and made quite a bit of money off of some of our fabulous chefs. You're seeing a theme of food, I'm sure, which is what raises the money around here, I'm finding. The other big event we held was a basket raffle. Different departments, any department could sign up to put together a basket of whatever theme they wanted. Individuals in the departments donated goods or solicited donations in the community, and all the baskets were raffled off in the sub over the course of most of one day. The basket raffle, the baskets were beautiful. Some of them were just huge, included tons of items, and the baskets ended up bringing in about $1,474, and tickets were only $1 a piece. So that was quite a lot of interest we got in that, and that involved the community members, the employees, and students. Additionally, we had a Guess the Number of M&Ms in the Jar contest hosted by the IT department. We had a 50-50 raffle hosted by Auxiliary Services, and Workforce Training raffled off a spa package, which is donated by our esthetician program. We had a baby picture contest where for the price of a ticket you could match the baby picture to the NIC employee. That was pretty interesting. And these additional events brought in about another $100. So with payroll deductions and one-time donations, we raised another $1,550 for a total amount raised of $4,111.73. I think we did a good job this year. I hope we generated enough interest that we can double that maybe next year and keep the interest going. It was really an interesting thing to be at the basket raffle because we had several people come in and say that they had benefited from services the United Way had provided for them and wanted to be able to buy a raffle ticket to give back. So I hope to keep generating some interest and get those funds up for next year. Any questions?
Any questions, Joe?
Well, I have a comment. First of all, Laura, thank you for chairing United Way on campus. And just for the record, the baby picture with the mustache was mine. And I would like to acknowledge Sarah Garcia. She is the chairperson for United Way in our entire community. So, Sarah, thank you for your service for United Way as well and what it does for our community.
Ron?
No, you go ahead.
Ron?
Laura, I've been involved in a lot of different fundraisers before, and I went to hear some information about United Way, because there's a lot of misunderstanding. It's usually these big corporations that do all this, and you hear these stories, where's the money go? And when you find out what the United Way does, and the interesting statistic that I told me, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that for every dollar that we generate here, we get back $1.10 based on our population and need here. And so I always just thought that's incredible. And that one of the other things I didn't know was that you could donate to a specific cause, like the Boys and Girls Club is a recipient under there, and I sit on the board there. And so so people sometimes limit their giving to certain places, but I think the United Way is an incredible organization that serves this whole community, and I applaud you for what you've done.
I would agree. I would add that I think we can do a lot more in the way of education for employees next year, with a little more lead time, maybe a little more preparation, and some good education for folks. I don't think people are aware of all the good that United Way does right here in Coeur d'Alene, so that's the goal next year. Thank you.
Christy, did you have something?
Laura, just to say that you make us all so proud for this campus and everyone that works here, goes here, that would work so hard on behalf of United Way. As Ron said, all the things they do in our community. So that is just a great report. And then one more thing, Laura, I watch Q6 in the morning. Shelley Monahan, she's awesome. And there I was, and I saw a familiar face come on the screen, celebrating a big day.
Yes, you did. Thanks to my 13-year-old daughter. She thought the whole town needed to know that I turned 50 yesterday. So
Happy birthday, Laura.
thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Our next agenda item are the constituent reports. And first up is ASNIC. And Benaiah, you've cut your beard. And but Joshua Brand, would you please give the report for the ASNIC?
Good evening, Chairman Howard, Dr. Dunlap, board, my constituents, and esteemed guests. My name is Joshua Brands. I'm the ASNIC Vice President. I'm filling in for Benaiah because he's at the Idaho State Board of Education meeting that's in College of Western Idaho. So that's why I'm here tonight. So thank you for this opportunity. I'll just kick off some of our reports. This month, we've been just kind of wrapping up as a team, and some of the things, just highlight a few of them. Our ASNIC Senators Jordan Doler, Andy Hughes, and ASNIC President Benaiah Cheevers took an afternoon trip to the Silver Valley Outreach Center on Saturday, December 7th, and it was their first time visiting the Valley Center. While there, they had the opportunity to meet Ann Powell and just the Silver Valley Outreach Center coordinator and discuss how we might better represent their campus, as well as create some opportunities there. Myself and Senator Alex Rodal-Cubius had the opportunity to meet, to visit and tour the aerospace facility, and that was a really neat just to see the beginnings of that facility. And we also had some interest from students who wanted to start a club, an aerospace club, so that was kind of cool seeing that. Our ASNIC Senator Bob Mertens has resigned his senator position last week to the ASNIC board, effective at the end of this fall semester, as he feels the need to focus more on his higher education goals. We appreciate Bob's service as chairman on the ASNIC Awareness Committee, vice chairman for its Intra-Club Council, member of the Funding Approval Student Task Force, and his just service to the student body. So with that being said, we'd like to thank him for being an instrumental part of our team and for all of his hard work. As a Student at Large is a program that we have for students who are interested in being part of student government but aren't able to commit as much time. So Bob plans on being involved at that capacity next semester during spring, which will be an opportunity for us to still continue working with him. But we appreciate him, how he understands his limitations and is willing to work towards that. Bob's major project for the year of improving transferability of courses and programs on campus will be carried on by our ASNIC team, and we will be collaborating with NIC administration on that. Last month, President Cheevers included in his report to you the purpose of this project and ASNIC's enthusiasm for collaboration. We look forward to seeing where this project will go. This being said, Benai and I are also in the process of reviewing applications in order to appoint a new senator for this open position. So by next spring, we'll have that opportunity. Recently, the ASNIC Student Government Board decided to change our bi-weekly board meetings to a monthly board meeting. As part of this decision, we recognize the importance of community engagement as one of our core values of North Idaho College. So the 2013-2014 board plans to invite an NIC community member to speak about relevant events during each ASNIC board meeting. This edition will be called the Cardinal Corner, and it'll be an opportunity for either an individual from our campus or from within our community to come and speak at our meetings to try to draw student interest, as well as just keep our students informed about what's going on campus and who people are. And last Tuesday, December 10th, our ASNIC Student Events Board put on our St. ASNIC Tree of Giving, and that was a success and with abundant student involvement. So that concludes my report. Are there any questions?
Any questions? Yes.
Just curious, when you have the senators just resigned, remind me what the process was to solicit applications, and I'm curious how many that you received for consideration.
Yeah, we reviewed. It was kind of last minute that we received the resignation, so we looked at our student at-larges, people who are currently involved within student government, and offered that application to them. We also looked at some of our past applicants for the open positions and offered everyone a chance to have the opportunity to apply if they felt they were able to next spring semester. So, and our executive board, Benaiah, me, myself, review the applications and then appoint a senator, in accordance to our Constitution. So.
Are you still receiving applications, or are you done?
We had them due last weekend, and then we had interviews early this week. So,
How many did you get?
we had a total of 3 who were able to
Commit?
Yeah. So that's how many we're looking at right now.
You feel confident you'll have a qualified person out of those 3?
Yeah. We'll have a decision by the end of this week. So.
Any other questions or comments? Joshua, thank you very much for the
All right,
report.
thank you. Have a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year.
Our next report is Staff Assembly. Nancy?
Thank you, Chairman Howard, Board of Trustees, and President Dunlap. Pat O'Halloran with the Aerospace Program was our featured speaker at this month's Staff Assembly. As many of you know, Pat is the recruiter placement coordinator for the Aerospace Program. We asked him to come and give us an overview of their program, and he gave us a quick description of how the program came about with the grant, and also what composite technology is, since the majority of us didn't know. We learned there were several local aviation and composite companies located in North Idaho and Eastern Washington that may be potential employers for our students when they complete their training. Also, thanks to everyone's generosity, we were able to meet all of the St. ASNIC food basket requests. In addition, we had enough baskets left over to help out additional students who needed a little support this time of year. I want to acknowledge and thank Jan Peterson of Food Services. Jan has been responsible for preparing all of the food baskets each and every year. She does a wonderful job in making sure that we have enough so everybody who needs a little help receives it. Thanks again to Jan, and that's the end of my report.
Thank you very much. Any questions or comments?
Happy holidays, everybody.
Thank you. Faculty Assembly, Michelle?
Good evening, Chairman Howard, trustees, President Dunlap, administrators, and guests. Tomorrow marks the end of the semester. Many of the NIC faculty members are starting to see the light at the end of the grading tunnel. while others are making a desperate attempt to scale the great essay term paper mountain. We approach the end with mixed feelings. There's always a sadness in drawing to a close the vibrant learning communities we have nurtured all semester. At the same time, there are new possibilities awaiting us next semester, the chance to begin again and to do better. The Faculty Assembly met on December 12th. The tenure workshop was once again the major topic. The Assembly discussed and passed the following resolution. We request a regularly formatted workshop with a public sign-up list. We reject the pro-con setup. We request an active role in the planning of the workshop and that the workshop be clearly focused on NIC tenure policy. We request that the workshop begin with an informational presentation by the faculty. So that was moved and passed by the Assembly last week. Our other topics last week, we provided feedback to the Senate concerning the policy revisions. We discussed the Event Center. I shared with the faculty your resolution concerning the center, as well as President Dunlap's information concerning funding mechanisms. This last month, I had the honor of serving on the committee that awarded the 2013 foundation grants. I was very impressed by the quality of the request and would like to thank the foundation for the wonderful contribution they make to our NIC community. That concludes my report, and I will stand for questions.
Any questions of Michelle? Thank you very much. Next constituent report from the Senate, Audrey.
Hello. Good evening, Chairman Howard, members of the board, President Dunlap. Tonight I will share with you the report from the November Senate meeting. A second reading was approved for the credit hour policy and procedure and the credit for prior learning policy and procedure. In addition, the revision to policy 20302, administrative services operational guidelines, and the removal of policy 5.03 financial aid guidelines were also approved for a second reading. Senate recommended that policy 30213, the loyalty oath, remain in the policy manual. Senate will meet tomorrow for the last time this semester, and as usual, we have a very full agenda. As we continue our work to assist in the review of the NIC policy manual. So I would like to take this time to commend the senators for their diligence in studying these proposals and working as a team to share our recommendations. And I would also like to thank the administration for their guidance with this process. And that concludes my report. Are there any questions?
Any questions or comments? Judy?
Mr. Chair, it's not just Audrey. When we had our legislators' reception, we talked about our board going to Boise to visit do the JFAC presentation and visit our legislative folk. And one of the things that we talked about, which seeing you helps me remember, was the possibility of some of our other folks, particularly faculty, visiting Boise, doing some networking amongst their compatriots. And I know we've done that before, and I didn't know if the time we go is the right time, or there's some other times. I don't know how it's funded. But the idea seemed worth mentioning again, that I think from a board perspective, we were happy to have more than just us go if this is the right time or whenever it should be done. So maybe after all that profound statement is, where are we with that process? Is there more that we as a board need to do? Do we just turn you loose for the administration to see what happens?
Yeah, I'm not sure that we've moved beyond the comments that you just made, actually. And it may be time to do that. But I think in our discussions, and correct me if I'm wrong, basically we left it up to President Dunlap to decide if there were additional staff or faculty members that he felt should go down there and could be away, and for him to coordinate that so that we could augment our presence down there as best as possible. But it has to be organized and by someone, and President Dunlap was nominated and appointed. Actually, haven't been asked to do it until this very moment.
Thank you very much, Chairman Howard. Last year, we did have individuals go down with us, and I think it was very beneficial. And so I will be getting with the constituent groups to see if that works for their schedules.
Thanks for bringing that up.
Thank you, Trustee Meyer. Thank you. And I'm interested, just so you know. Merry Christmas, Happy New Year.
Thank you. Did you have another comment?
No, I was just thinking out loud since we talked about this.
Don't think out loud, no.
That could affect our potential travel
Oh.
arrangements.
We'll see.
Yeah, as what we discussed, yeah.
Our next item on the agenda is the President's report. President Dunlap.
Chairman Howard, trustees, and colleagues, good evening. I will do the President's report and then from that talk about an action plan going forward with our capital projects. At our last meeting, Trustee Banducci asked us to look into the ability to acquire hardware to broadcast live our trustee reports. And there are two pieces of equipment that can do that. They are called codexes, and one of them costs $3,995 and has a $3,000 annual subscription rate, and that provides for instantaneous streaming. The other one is a $3,495 acquisition, and there is no annual fee, but there is a time delay that it takes to transmit. Currently, we broadcast our board reports from a recording, usually within 24, but at the latest within 48 hours. Over the course of this past year, based on reduced enrollment, we have reduced our budgets by over $840,000. And so at this point, I would not suggest acquiring that property to, that equipment, I should say, to broadcast live. And so unless directed by the board, I would not move in that direction. We had some very good news this week. We received another Albertsons Foundation grant, and this one to the tune of $538,000, and it is for our iBest program. Now, the iBest program is a program that integrates basic educational skills with technical skills, and they're both taught at the same time. We had a grant previously, for the previous 3 years, for $552,000, and because that was so successful, they asked us to apply again and then take the lessons learned from that previous 3 years and apply them in this new grant period. And so this particular grant will expand in integrating our best practices to a broader campus audience, and it will allow us to serve both students in and out of our career and technical programs with the best practices that have been established with a cohort, college preparation, intrusive advising, and an early alert system. A college success class and peer mentoring and tutoring are also included. Delivery of this program will be to a minimum of 500 students over the next 3 years. And so we are greatly appreciated with the Albertsons Foundation. And congratulations to the Foundation Office and Sarah Flayland, who helped put that grant together, along with Molly and Judith, our two iBest instructors. So good job. During the recent cold snap, we had pipes break in 2 buildings. One was our headwaters building. It gives new meaning to the term headwaters. And that caused upwards of $100,000 worth of damage. And that was our facilities building, and the people that were located in that building have now relocated to the transportation building. And in addition, we had a pipe break in our aerospace facility. It provided minor damage. Our iCrimp insurance will cover the cost of repairing and refurbishing what has been damaged. However, in the course of sorting through that damage, we discovered there was some asbestos that needed abatement in the building, and that's about a $25,000 project, and we will fund that out of our facilities maintenance budget. And Gary Stark, who was in charge of our facilities, now is residing over in the transportation area. Yeah, Ron?
Well, I'm sorry, but I have better news than what you reported.
Oh, great.
iCrimp today called and said they would fund the asbestos abatement. Initially, they said they wouldn't, but now they will.
Perfect.
So we don't have to come up with $25,000.
Well, Merry Christmas.
Merry
Yeah.
Christmas, Ron
excellent.
Dorn.
That is good news.
Good one.
The next topic I want to mention is personnel, and in particular, Ron Dorn. And tonight is Ron's last night as vice president. He is retiring, and tomorrow morning he's getting in his vehicle with a U-Haul and heading for Montana. So Ron, thank you very much for your service. We had gone out for a national search for a replacement for Ron. That was a failed search, and so we've redistributed some of the responsibilities until we go out for another national search, which will probably be at the end of February. And Sarah Garcia has assumed additional responsibilities in the financial office that includes budgeting, forecasting, payroll services, accounting, and other responsibilities. So thank you, Sarah, for stepping up to the plate. In addition, Gary Stark will be working as an interim director for our facilities because Mike Halpern, our former director, retired this past month. And then the one area that we did not have covered was in facilities planning, capital construction, forecasting, and budget development for those types of projects. And so it is my intent to contract with Dave Teeter, former CFO with the Coeur d'Alene School District, and for the past 17 years has been working on capital construction projects for educational institutions throughout the Pacific Northwest to perform those facility planning specific functions. One sad bit of news in our facilities area, George Meyer, a 5-year employee of the college, passed away this past week, and we offer our sincere condolences to George's family and his wife, Lisa. There will be a memorial service on Saturday at 2 p.m. at Mountain Lakes Bible Church, which is located at 2215 7th Avenue. And so George will be certainly missed. He was the supervisor for a transportation area. Mark Browning, who is not here, he's down in is he in Lewiston or is he in Boise?
Definitely not him.
Nampa, for the State Board of Education meeting along with Graydon. But Mark Browning has been elected the new regional president of the National Council on Marketing and Public Affairs. And so congratulations to Mark on that. And that's why Stacy is here this evening and Alex is sitting in for Graydon. We've got a legislative session coming up, and there is a piece of legislation that relates directly to North Idaho College. You may recall that our Post Academy had come under fire from the Meridian Academy in recent months because of some services they were providing to our academy, and indicated that there was a cost associated with providing those weekly quizzes and that they no longer wanted to provide that function. Now, the Meridian Academy is funded by parking tickets throughout the state. And just by way of example, Sheriff Ben Wolfinger sends about $30,000 to the Meridian Academy. And there is no state support for the NIC Post Academy. So Senator Getty is introducing legislation that will require the Meridian Academy to divert some of their funding to support the NIC post-academy. So hopefully that will be successful and resolve the issue between the two academies. We rely a great deal on volunteer tutors from the community to assist our students in both math and language arts. And Marty Bruner, our volunteer tutor coordinator and adult basic education advisor, has put out the word with the help of the NIC Community Relations Department, thank you, Stacy, and asked for volunteers to help tutor. And we had an overwhelming response this year. And yesterday, Marty and Laura Umtham, one of our ABE instructors, signed up and trained 18 volunteers from our community to work as tutors to help our students. And I thought that was a remarkable support from our community, and it's very much appreciated. The nurse pinning ceremony is December 19th, tomorrow evening, and that will be in Schuler Auditorium at 7 p.m., and you all are certainly invited to attend. It's a very heartfelt and meaningful ceremony for those students who will be graduating with a degree in nursing, and this officially welcomes them to the profession of nursing. Let's see, last of all, I would, on this portion of my reporting, would like to offer all of you a very Merry Christmas greeting, and hope it's a very prosperous and healthy new year for you for this forthcoming year, and we certainly appreciate our trustees' service to the college. So we wish you well, and thank you very much. At this point, I'm going to talk about an action plan for our capital projects. And over the course of time, we have talked quite a bit about our capital projects. And what has been lacking is an action plan in terms of what needs to be done. So there's two things I want to do tonight. One is to review a cash flow that demonstrates how we could go about funding these projects. And then second of all, look at some of the steps that are necessary to put these projects in place. In the past 10 years, we have had 9 and even more, I've discovered tonight, studies done on a wide variety of projects and master planning. And so you'll see some of the cover sheets for these as I scroll through. And what we'd like to do this evening is describe to you a process that brings all of this information together and then allows us to move forward. Now, there are some planning assumptions that go along with this presentation. First of all, there are several different funding sources that can help us fund up these projects that include cash on hand, capital reserve fund, fundraising, grants, permanent building fund, and bonds. Included in these estimates is the infrastructure as well, and you'll see that as we go along. In addition, there is $900,000 available in foregone taxes. We have not taken those. I am not advocating we take those, but I want everyone to understand that there is capacity within what we are allowed to do with our statutes. And last year we did not take any foregone taxes, but this is what is available as of today. But again, I'm not suggesting that we take that. I'm suggesting that this is a resource that needs to be included. There is also money in our capital budget for small campus projects, and Trustee Wood mentioned last time that she didn't want to have us deplete our capital reserve fund for these projects. And so you'll see as we move along that we are not doing that and that there will be funding that remains for small campus projects. In addition, regular campus maintenance comes from the operating budget. That's what we have always done, and that's what we will continue to do. There are 2 bonds that are being suggested, one with an amortization of 20 years and the other with an amortization of 30 years. We also have college land assets valued at approximately $2 million that could be used to help fund these projects if we did not use them as part of these projects. And that includes 40 acres in the Rathdrum Prairie. It also includes 11 acres in the Riverbend area. It's just another asset that is available that I wanted to point out. And lastly, major project timelines are flexible depending on the funding sources, and you'll see that as we go through this Excel spreadsheet. So I know this is hard to read, and we blew it up as much as we possibly could, and we put this on 3 different slides, and you have handouts for that, but I'm going to walk you through these numbers. And first of all, you'll look at 2014. And we currently have $4 million in our capital reserve fund. From our base, we will be adding another $2.4 million every year henceforth. And so 2014, 15, 16, and so on, we will add to that from our base allocation. Those 2 numbers leave us $6.4 million in revenue or in total assets in our capital reserve fund at the end of this school year, which will be at the end of June. What I am proposing this year for an expenditure, and it's the only expenditure this year, is $100,000 to support this action plan to move these capital projects forward, and I'll get into that a little bit more. The balance at the end of this year is $6.3 million, and then we carry that forward to 2015. And we start out with $6.3 million. We add another 2.4 to that, and that leaves us with $8.7 million. For our 4 major capital projects, there will be significant planning and design and pre-design that needs to take place, and so I am suggesting that we would use approximately $500,000 in that planning effort for those capital projects next year. That leaves us with $820 million at the end of 2015, and we carry that forward at another 2.4 to that, and we have made a presentation to the Permanent Building Fund to assist with our joint use facility. And what we have asked for is $4 million over a 2-year period of time. And so that would be in 2016 and 2017. And we also believe there is a high likelihood of success of receiving an EDA grant to support that project. I've had considerable experience with the EDA, and my last endeavor was a $6 million grant from them. CSI received a $3 million grant to support their career and technical facility, and so we think that going after that grant has a high likelihood of success. Next, you'll see $25 million listed as a bond effort to support the career and technical building and the remodel of the Headland building. So total revenue that year would be approximately $42.1 million. Expenditures related to that project and others would be $500,000 again in planning for the future projects, $30 million for the career and technical facility, and let me see here, $4 million for the joint use facility, and that leaves us with a balance of 7.6 at the end of 2016. In 2017, we carry forward the 7.6. We add another 2.4, and then we look at the projects that LCDC has committed to, as well as community campaigns that we would raise through a fundraising effort. And so you've got a $15 million and a $6 million effort there, another $4 million with the permanent joint building, or for the joint use facility, and then 8.2 million in bonds for the student rec center, which the students have already agreed to tax themselves to support that particular project. And then under expenditures, you've got a $20 million project for the sports complex, 10 million for the joint use project, and 8.2 for the student rec center. And then for the first time, you'll see 1.96 million, which will carry on, which would be the bond payment for that career and technical facility. So that's a 20-year bond for $25 million at 4% interest plus fees. That comes to 1.96 per year in payments. That leaves 3.04 million at the end of 2017. We carry that forward at 2.4, and then you'll see a 0.47, which is the money the students have taxed themselves to support the student rec center. And then you'll see a 3 million, which is the 1 million from NIC, University of Idaho, and LCSC to support the joint use facility. And that gives us total revenues of 8.91 and expenditures henceforth, and I won't go through all of the next slides, but you'll see the 1.96, which is the ongoing bond support or payment for the career and technical facility, and then the rec center bond comes in at 0.47, and that's over a 30-year period of time. And so as you carry this forward, you'll see that the 2.4 keeps being added to the bottom line, and then the two expenditures that go on for 20 to 30 years is the 1.96 payment and the 0.47 payment. And you'll see that the fund balance continues to slightly grow each year. The third slide is exactly the same and carries this out through 2028. Now, the point of this is that we are capable of doing multiple projects concurrently. There are several different revenue streams that make this possible, and that construction sequencing can be adjusted based on when that funding is available, but it doesn't affect the bottom line to the point that these projects cannot be done concurrently. So the next steps in terms of the scope of work and in terms of an action plan that needs to happen to bring these projects to fruition. We need to begin the project that would include communication, setting up internal processes, review processes, and for handling and storage of project paperwork, obtaining reports, and how to revise some of the original planning that has already taken place. The deliverables for this phase one would be a revised work plan and schedule. Under data gathering, collection, and consolidation, as I pointed out, we have tremendous amount of studies that have already been done. Some of the data in there is up to date, some of it is not up to date, but we need to consolidate the data and determine what is valid, what we're going to use, and what will help us moving forward. The analysis of, and the deliverable for that will be a data acquisition report. Third will be analysis of the data that's gathered, and in particular, we will determine those areas where a deficiency exists between the various reports that have already been done that are related to the capital projects, and then reconcile any conflicts between current practices and standards or information from prior reports. And the deliverables on that will be an ad hoc report as necessary. The fourth area, general programming management, administration, and supervision. The purpose is to assist the college with overall management, development, execution, coordination, and administration of the capital planning and construction project. And there are a number of sub-elements to that I won't go into great detail at this time. And the deliverable from this phase will be a general report that articulates how the management, administration, and supervision of these capital projects will take place. Fifth, strategic financial management will be to provide staff with high-level budgeting and the development of processes for cost control and timely, accurate measurement and reporting of expenditures, and to assist NIC in refining its overall capital program budget, including revenue sources, probable hard and soft costs such as fees and permits, and to assist in the management of grants, rebates from public agencies, foundation, utilities, and so on, and to identify options for tracking overall project budgets and costs with NIC fiscal team, construction managers, and architectural and engineering firms. And the deliverable from this piece will be periodic fiscal reports for the administration and the board. Sixth, scheduled development would include, or the purpose would be to develop, review, and revise both a program and project schedule that conforms to NIC requirements, identify software used by a management consulting team firm for use in coordinating and maintaining project and program schedules. We would identify software used by architectural and engineering firms for use in coordinating and maintaining schedules that document the sequence and time frame for each project, and assist the architectural and engineering firms to develop and maintain updated task matrix for each project, and to assist the architectural engineering firms in the development of a preliminary detailed project implementation schedule and critical dates list. And the deliverable from this section would be a task matrix and schedule. Number 7, review and verify enrollment projections. We have a need to verify what is happening with our enrollment as the economy has changed. Our enrollment has changed significantly and in fact has plateaued off and begun to decline. And what we've seen, for example, in the facilities master plan that was done in 2009 is a projection that enrollment would continue to grow to a point of over 10,000 students. And that clearly is not the case, hence the need to relook the data, consolidate the data that is important, and then determine what the actual enrollment and projected enrollment data actually is. Lastly, on this slide is to develop space utilization analysis, which would include not only the scheduling of labs and classrooms and the usage of those, but the office space that is in critical shortage right now for faculty and staff. And the deliverable for this section would be a space utilization report. Conduct the campus planner RFQ development. We would need to develop an RFQ to develop the preliminary language for an RFQ for a campus planner. Information developed here will become the basis for additional reviews of the RFQ process, and a number of subtasks under that. The deliverable will be the final RFQ and RFQ notice. 11 is the pre-proposal activities, and that includes interviews with a variety of individuals, conducting pre-proposal conferences, receive questions from interested respondents, and prepare question and answer documentation for publication, prepare agendas as necessary, and share the pre-proposal information with appropriate community college leaders and community leaders. The 12th area is the screening process that we would utilize to screen RFQ applicants. and the development of a screening instrument that would be used to objectively evaluate the proposals. 13, interview and selection process of the firm that would be developing the projects for us. And the deliverable there will be an interview instrument. And then manage the long-range and campus planning process. And this would be to coordinate and supervise the facility, campus planning firm's activities, and final product, including public engagement, options development, and final plan and design. And the deliverable under this area would be a master plan options and a final long-range master facility plan, which we don't have, that we are utilizing right now. The 15th area is planning, drawing, and budgets, and all of the processes that go with that. And the deliverable would be the drawings and cost estimate report and ad hoc reports as necessary. And this would be to use existing documentation to identify the facility and site layout in conceptual form and to identify the costs necessary to accomplish the work identified in the conceptual drawings. And then 16, project management. The purpose would be to coordinate and supervise construction of those related areas of planning, design, procurement, schedule, construction, and post-construction activities. And there is a huge subset that goes into that I won't cover at this point. But the deliverables will be periodic progress reports, schedules, and budget reports. And then lastly, to manage efficiency studies as necessary. And it may be that we don't need the efficiency studies done. For example, one area that was suggested was our safety and security. Well, we've done considerable amount of work in that area recently, and I think the staff and myself feel very comfortable where we are with our safety and security planning, and so that would not be something that would necessarily be utilized. But it could include our transportation area. It could include our business operations and a wide variety of other areas if we chose to do that. And so my recommendation is that the Board of Trustees direct administration to move forward with facilities and capital master planning and approve expenditure of up to $100,000 from capital reserve for contracted services through the end of this fiscal year to consolidate facilities program management, facilities data collection and consolidation, develop capital construction management and schedules, develop a long-range facilities master plan, and perform efficiency master studies as necessary. Now, I'm not suggesting that all of this will cost $100,000, but I am asking for direction and authority to spend up to that amount as we contract out for these services. And that concludes my presentation related to capital projects and an action plan on how we could go about developing these 4 projects and the financing that goes with that.
I don't imagine there's going to be any questions, but just in case, I'll start down at the end here with Ron.
Joe, that was a 20-minute presentation, lots of numbers and information, and I got it.
You're welcome.
Yeah, no, it's all perfect. I got it. First of all, for point of clarification, you used the term foregone taxes at $900 available.
$900,000.
Be $900,000, yes. I'm a little confused with that because we're still using the foregone taxes at $2.4 million a year. We don't call them foregone taxes anymore?
No, once foregone taxes are collected, they become part of our base. So the 2.4 million that you're referring to are part of our base budget. What I'm saying.
But let me,
Sure.
so since we started collecting 7 years ago, this 2.4 million, it became part of our base, which means that we just keep collecting that. Even though it was a one-time use, we've done this time, now we've built up to another 900,000 there. If we were to use that again, it goes back on top of the 2.4, so we've increased on these projects $3.3 million a year, and that becomes a base, and then we keep increasing on top of that, which means if we don't use it all, we have more foregone taxes. When does that stop, Joe?
Well, let me back up a little bit. The 900,000 was there as a reference point because that is what is available now. And as I mentioned earlier, I'm not suggesting that we take that, but I think it's important that people understand that that is an asset that is available. You refer to the 2.4 as a one-time use, and from my understanding is that it was used to secure the mill site that has become the higher education campus, and that a decision was made by the trustees to put that into a capital reserve fund so that we could use that funding for these capital projects.
And we'll take it a step at a time because I need some clarification on it. You were right that the 2.4 was used to buy the facilities. That's what we told our taxpayers we were going to use it for, which is $10 million, which is 4 years. When the trustees, past trustees, have used it now since then, which now I'm a part of this, that was not what the taxpayers were told, and that wasn't sold to them. So there's a lot of people that are surprised that we keep using this. I think they would be really surprised as now we have this accumulation of foregone taxes that is going, that you say that we could possibly use it. We're not suggesting using it, but it's still there. That to me looks like we're double dipping against that. So I don't want to spend a lot of time on that, but just for point of clarification, that when we talk about going on I added up $72 million worth of capital budgets here, and that we have a $2 million decision that was made 12 years ago or 10 years ago on where this facility goes, but that could be possibly the source. We made a decision to purchase this 40 acres out there. Regarding this $100,000, I think we're pretty premature to authorize anything because we just spent last year $126,000 for one portion of these 4 projects, and we have a report that hasn't done what we hoped it would do. Part of the report was, at the end of this, is we were going to go down to see the RGU model that they were suggesting that we should look at, and that was completely different than what our needs and wants are here. So as I look at these 4 projects, I look at possibly 4 separate locations. I look at CTE as the #1 importance, and we mix this up with a very expensive sports complex. And I go through this, I said, Joe, I think we need to be able to stop before we make a commitment for any more money, and we don't try to do a master plan that says we're going to develop all 4 of these, we can do more than one at a time. The taxpayers can't handle additional bonds, levies, increased taxes at this time unless we have a very clear picture of what it is we're building and what we're going for. So my recommendation is the answer is no, that we better get a little bit farther down the road than we authorize any money, because once it becomes a project, once they do this incredible report, then at this point, that's the vision of where we're going on, and I think we're too premature. That's my.
Christie?
Mr. Chair. Well, and Ron, I'm always going to speak out about the foregone, just because I was on the board and when that decision was made, and we did not mislead the taxpayers, and we have not sold them one vision and done something else. We've never strayed from what we said we would do. So that's one issue on the foregone. And the $900,000 that's currently in foregone is obviously taxes that this board, you included, you and Todd have been part of it now and made the decision last year, taxes that we did not choose to take, the 3% that's allowed by law. So good for us, and we hope to keep going down that road. But I want to clarify on foregone that our past board has not misled the public. This proposal is very large, Joe, and you gave a lot of information. And some of the issues that I have is, I just now got it. It's too much to try to understand in a 20-minute presentation and say, go spend $100,000. Whether we need to do some of these things, possibly, I just don't really know. I'd like to see a workshop where we could spend a little more time on this. I am a little hinky about master plans too, because we've done them. And you alluded to how many we've done. We did one just 3 years ago for a lot of money. And so you've kind of titled this as an action plan. I do understand we need to take action at some point. So I guess I'd like to just spend a little more time with it, not saying it's not valid, just spend more time rather than just, I would have liked to have got it in advance. And I know sometimes that's difficult to do, but Mr. Chair, I'd like to have a board workshop on this.
Judy, did you have any comments?
All good thoughts. One of them, to try and get hold of this a bit, because it is a big project. You had some deliverables, but we didn't have any dates as to when things might happen. That might help us get a sense of what's ahead here. And I think, I guess, right from the beginning, the first list of things you were going to do, I'm trying to find it, the page number, but, well, next steps, scope of work, I think would be what we'd be working off of. And almost by every item, my notes were then, when would it happen? And I don't know that you know that yet, but that might be part of what we need to have better defined. So as we look at what we're going to do and how soon it happens and what it is we get, it might help us feel better about what we're going to spend.
Todd, did you have a comment or question?
Nope, I'm okay at the moment.
Okay. Joe, before you probably want to respond maybe to some of the comments that were made, but I guess I too would like to make sure that there is a statement made with regard to this 2.4 million in taxes that we've taken every year since we paid off the mill site. I do not remember ever saying that that was money that was not going to be continued to be used for the college purposes. Indeed, my understanding is that all along it was, first we pay for the property, then we save that money, put it aside for development of capital needs, buildings on the property or on other property where we feel that the building needs are there. So this, the concept that the 2.4 million was in some way promised at some point in time that it would be discontinued is something that I find absolutely no basis for in terms of my memory anyway. And I went to several of those public meetings that were had and was part of that discussion at the time, although I was not on the board. So it is, however, a dialogue that keeps coming up. And I think we need to probably find some peace with the concept that unless this board votes to say we are no longer going to collect that 2.4 million, the 2.4 million continues to come in as part of the taxes because it's not foregone taxes anymore, it's just part of our tax base. But so far, this board has, over the last 3 or 4 years, 4 years or more, said that 2.4 is going to go into a capital fund. It's not going to be used for operating expenses. It's not going to be used for ongoing expenses other than to provide capital improvements on the property. That's been the promise that we've made with regard to this money, and so far my understanding is we've kept that promise. So that 2.4 million is something that we have tried to make sure that we put it toward these capital improvements. So your use of the 2.4 in your projections, to use that to help pay off a bond that we would ask for to help build the PTE or the CTE, the Career Technical Facilities, is something that is, again, consistent with our promise that we will use that money to help develop capital needs that we have in this college. And I quite frankly like the idea that you've presented of moving forward with something, because unfortunately, we don't seem to move forward. We always seem to say, we need another meeting, we need more information, we need another plan. And I can appreciate the frustrations that this board feels, because I feel them, about we want to know more. And we want to be sure that we're moving in the right direction. But right now, we're moving in no direction. We're at a standstill. And I think what you proposed is a plan for moving forward, for putting these past plans into some kind of a form that we can get the best out of them that we can, and to try and set up a format of moving forward with these capital improvement needs that you've got on your program. So I like the idea of doing it. I agree, though, with Christie that these things are something that we need to think about. But we don't need to keep thinking about them. At some point in time, we need to make a decision. And I would like to see us, quite frankly, use your recommendation as a motion. And we're not going to, our policy and procedure is not to pass it on the first reading, which this would be, or if we put it on the meeting for next month would be the first reading, and we would have a month or so to then consider the content of it before we're called upon to either pass or reject it. So I would like to urge the board to take a look at the recommendation as a one step forward in terms of moving into a constructive way of trying to develop a plan that we can that we can move in a positive direction and not keep stalling out. I think that's what its purpose is, and I think it has that promise. Thank you.
Mr. Chair,
Yes. Todd.
I don't want to interrupt you.
I'm done.
You're done, sir. I wasn't going to add to this conversation, but I have to confess I do feel the need to wade in on this conversation now. Some of us that went through the election cycle last year, we had various supporters. Some of the folks that were supporting me, I will share with you, are certainly a segment of our population that has a little different view and opinion regarding the foregone taxes. And I would suggest to you that to some of them, that it is an issue, it's still a continuous issue, that they felt that it was used as a one-time source of funding for the purchase of the mill site, and that under that concept, be used once and be done, not become what would be considered a permanent tax increase of $2.4 million on an annual basis. So for many folks, they still see that as a point of contention, and that their perception during that initial process was that it would be just a one-time use for that purchase and not a continuing funding vehicle or for reserve or for whatever. Again, so maybe that's perceptions, maybe that's misunderstandings, maybe I don't know what was stated specifically at the workshops, but in the minds of many people, that there is still there's still a niche that hasn't been scratched there. And so I say that partly that as a board, we just need to be aware of that, because, you know, as we look for public support, there are many that are still looking at that, seeing it as a permanent tax increase. And then I think Ron was just pointing out the sensitivity that, you know, if we were to even consider adding another 900,000 or some amount thereof, portion of, people would see that as another tax increase, maybe for one-time use, but then on a continuing basis again. So you just have to be careful with that, because there are people that see it that way. Again, whether that's mistaken or not, or what they perceived or what they heard, or what their takeaway was from those workshops and the discussion and what happened years ago. But a person's perception becomes their reality. And I can guarantee you that last year, there were many people's reality regarding the foregone taxes. So I share that. It's very current still.
Oh, go ahead, Ron.
You know, Ken, it really, we can debate this all the time, but I think that the tough part is that the real debate's going to not be between what my perception was, what your perception was, and the past board's perception was of what it's going to be the citizens of Kootenai County's perception when they go, because we're going to need their support when it comes time to pass a bond, right?
Yes, we do.
So when we go there, and I don't want to find that out the hard way, which is we can't pass that because the feedback that I get, not just from, let's just say, the select group of people, it's from everybody's misunderstanding about what this education corridor was, the story of what it was going to be, and they compared that to the Kroc Center, which the Kroc Center is alive and well and an incredible jewel to our community. But this education corridor, we didn't get the support of the 4 higher education institutions that were coming along, said that what we're going to do. We weren't ready to build on it. Now we're looking at as NIC is going to carry that ball in. I can guarantee you that if today we had to go to the taxpayers, they're going to tell us the answer to that question by the way we do not get the support for any portion of the $72 million that we're looking at. My suggestion, again, Joe, is I want to see this more than anything for us to advance this college and to focus on our #1 priority. And we say at every meeting, which is career and technical education. But when we get distracted talking about sports complexes and we start talking about joint use facilities and whatever, and we want to throw it all in there, it's too much for us to get our arms around. At least it is for somebody like me, when we're talking about $72 million where we need the support of every single taxpayer in this community.
Christie?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. But, you know, Todd, you made a good point. Ron, I appreciate your points of what perception may be. All I can do is tell you I was on the board. Those words were never uttered. I think there were people in community and prestigious positions that possibly suggested to the board that we do not continue the foregone tax once the property was paid. But the board, just like all of us do now, the board had to sit and think everything we do is a value judgment. We're tasked with that all the time. So this college has been put in a position where we do not have funding for the facilities that we need. And so the board at that time never considered, once it was in the base, it was staying in the base, and it was going to be verbally agreed upon, and maybe some of you will find that a surprise. That was a verbal agreement that it would be put into a fund for facilities. I personally wanted to make sure that if we had other needs, if we had a budget crisis, that people wouldn't say you're locked into this, because we will need funding maybe at some point in time in other areas. But regardless, those words were never uttered by this board in any kind of a workshop, any kind of a board session where we said we will discontinue the foregone. It was taxes that were never collected. We purchased the property. We felt at that time that was a thing to do. I will never back away from that. I'm so grateful we have that property out there, and we have so many opportunities for our students because of it. But, so, that's my foregone pitch. This is, I also agree with Ron that this is just so much information, Joe, and Ken, I hear your frustration that we just don't move forward. But the problem is, it's hard to move forward on something this large, $100,000, when we've talked about how about we sit and focus on one project at a time, actually have a board meeting where that's all we talk about, one project, try to make some decisions and move forward. And to spend up to $100,000 and not really totally understand what it's all being spent on is just not responsible as a board member. I want a little more time to look at this. And I don't want just another study that sits on a shelf. The last study was 3 years ago for $75,000, and we did nothing with it. So it's not responsible.
Good, Judy.
We've talked about the foregone, and one more oar in the water on this one, because I too was on the board, and I was proud to be on the board to say that we saw an opportunity to buy land that was only available at that time. To do that, we then said to folks, we were happy not to take your taxes earlier on, but now we do need to. So foregone taxes were taxes people got to keep for a while till we drew on them. And we have drawn on them. But the logic of buying land and not doing any planning for what we're going to do with the land didn't make sense either. And so we as a board said, once we have that authorized amount of tax that we're entitled to, in a sense, painful as it is, that's what we needed to do, was say, not only are we going to use the taxes for buying the land, but then also saying, get ready for using that land and building on it. We too wish our partners had joined us earlier, and we gave them lots of opportunities, and we will continue to give them opportunities to participate with us. But that can't stop us from doing that kind of planning and acquiring the funds we need to do it. So that too was my back. Foregone word to me was troubling because they, in fact, were taxes that folks hadn't had to pay, that now we said you're going to need to begin to do so. And we needed to do that to provide the services that the taxpayers have also asked us to do. And Krista, you pointed out before, the state has chosen not to participate as much, and so here we are. It's up to us. One of the things our board's going to do is go to Boise in January and remind the legislators and the government about opportunities to help again in some fashion as we can. To come back then to the recommendations and the level of how do we get going again? It feels like we're spinning our wheels. Joe, in the recommendation portion here that we have, you're suggesting some planning, an expenditure of $100,000 through the end of this fiscal year, which would be from now till June
30th.
Yep. And I come back to trying to better define what will we get for that. I think that's what we're all trying to absorb. Also a reminder that what you presented for us is not just 1 year's worth of stuff. This is a whole big plan. And I think we all want to, and I've certainly been one that's championed, said we don't want to do it in isolation, one building here, one building there. We need to have a plan that says over the next, how many years did you take us?
Well, the one bond was for 30 years and one was for 20 years.
And over that timeline, the chart you gave us started with this year, 2014, and carried us all the way through till 2023?
28 or something, yeah.
28, better yet.
Yep.
So for us to begin to look at that big picture and the steps of the scope of the work, maybe part of what we need to have more fleshed out is some of the dates that these progress might happen. I think there are about 16 points. Do you expect to have all 17 points completed by June 30th?
No.
So the 100,000 that you're suggesting we spend now would take us how far? What are we getting for 100,000? As best you can tell.
Well, that will take us through whatever contracted services we contract for
Right.
through the end of June.
Right, on this list.
On that
This
list.
is the list of ideas we want to
Yes,
have
and
happen.
what you're asking for is a timeline
I'm just thinking of,
for that. And
Quantify
I
it.
will need to go back and put some pen to paper.
and we're not trying to put anybody on the spot, we're trying to get hold of how do we, as a board, move this along. Part of it is getting used to it.
I was counting it earlier.
Part of it is maybe not spending 100,000, but for today, could we, and Mr. Chair, you mentioned we're first reading sort of thing, either that or just an action item that says, let's start with a couple of on the list
7, 8.
and see how that goes, or that we start with that and you come back in January with some fleshing out of more of it. Just trying to get hold of it a little bit, rather than have it just go thud. But it's big, but it's what we needed to have happen. That's what we asked our president to go do, was scope it out, long-term, figure out ways to fund it. And now, you're right, we're gonna need to figure out how to fund it with our taxpayers' support. And we need to prove that with the documentation that you're suggesting we can get.
Mr. Chair?
Just, Joe, you have access to all 3 community colleges in the state of Idaho. We pay the highest taxes as a taxpayer per property tax as any other county in the state of Idaho. Is that true?
That's correct.
Number 2 is we've doubled our taxes to our taxpayers in that 5-year window that we went through this process. And these guys, the taxpayers, have absorbed this pain. My question to you is, the real fight isn't with our taxpayers and amongst our board. Our fight is with the state of Idaho. The reason that we're doing what we're doing today is because our state has let us down in the support. Isn't that true?
I think that's partially true. In the past several years, there has not been funding available through the Permanent Building Fund. And although revenues for the state are slowly starting to tick up, I don't have any promise that there will be funding for the permanent building fund this year. But to a large extent, the state has ceased funding capital projects. And so one strategy could be to try and engage the state, but they're subjected to enormous pressures from a wide variety of areas and constituents. Or we look at how do we resolve that ourselves. And that's what I've tried to do here, is look at how we can put in place bonds, bonding and other mechanisms to fund these projects. And if you use the CTE project as an example, the payment on that is 1.96 million per year. So there is no increase in taxes to our property owners, to our constituents. That funding is already in place with the funding that has been added to our base. And so we have the ability to fund that project through a bond without increasing taxes one iota.
I think that's an excellent approach to this, but I think that we don't let the state off. We know that the state of Idaho subsidizes taxes for the other two colleges at a higher rate than what they give to us, and that we have been forced to go put additional burden on our local taxpayers here. I think for economic development, what we're talking about doing, which is to take us from the lowest in the state of the number of students enrolled in career and technical education to get to be somewhere close to industry standards or national standards of this, I think it's going to need their help to be able to do this. So when we're down there, we need to meet with the governor, we need to meet with the Department of Commerce that are trying to drive economic growth in this area by saying that we can't do this unless we have a facility that is capable of producing these skilled and trained workers, and this is what we're talking about.
Okay. Todd?
Well, not to come across as a smart aleck, but I'm a numbers guy. Judy just used the number 17. Either I have a different copy than everybody else, but I have 8 bullets on this page and 8 bullets on this page, 8 dots, 8 circles, whatever you want to call them. Where are we getting a 17th bullet?
I was numbering them, and maybe
Did I miss
I
that?
think there are 16
That's better,
elements
yeah.
Okay,
there.
just thought I'd ask for clarification. I was wondering if I had a different copy than everybody else.
Is that it?
That was it, but I just had me scratching my head. I kept hearing 17, and I didn't add 17.
I went from page number 8 to number 10. You're right, I missed, thank you. So we'll go back to 16 list.
Anybody else have any other comments or, and before we go on, Joe, I do have, because there are a couple things that, quite frankly, to me, we all have to keep in mind. I think what you're asking for here is the authority, or actually some resources, to do what we asked you to do the last meeting, which was to come up with some kind of a way to get a master plan, which we hadn't done for a long time. We had a master educational plan. We don't have a master facilities plan, and so we asked you to give us an outline, and you come forward with this. So this is a follow-through to a request that we made to you for a master plan. And when we look at the total, and Ron has indicated it's 72 million, I think we have to keep in mind that 25 million of that is for the professional technical, as I understand it.
30 under this.
Yeah, that would be money that would be paid for with the 2.4 million that we keep returning to our
That's
capital
correct.
account. For the athletic center, to the extent that it goes forward at all, and we don't know if it will, that, we've already passed a resolution that we're not using college money for that, that's going to be by donations and by funding from LCDC or other sources outside of the college. So, and then for the student facility, that's being paid by student money and would not be tax money.
That's correct.
So, as we look at these projects, the master plan that you put forward, and by the way, added into that is the multiple use facility. We're looking at contributions from LCSC, U of I, potentially some hospital organizations in the hospital, maybe, again, LCDC. So we're looking for other funding that's to put that together, so we don't really know if there's going to be any tax implications on that or not.
Right.
So out of all of these plans that total up to this 72 million, the only one that we're looking at that might implicate tax dollars from the taxpayers is money that we would take out of the 2.4 million that we've already taken.
That's correct.
I know we've had some discussion about, okay, that was the foregone taxes, and maybe there was some expectations about it, and I suspect that it may be incumbent upon us at some point in time, if not tonight, to just make a motion. Are we going to continue to take the 2.4 and put it into capital resources, or are we going to return it to the voters? Period. So that everybody knows what this board decides to do with the 2.4 million. And then we can move forward with, are we going to have it to use to pay off the payments of a $25 million bond if it's passed, so we don't have to increase taxes, or are we going to return it? And we can stop the discussion about talking about 2.4 million as something that there's a misunderstanding. If there's a misunderstanding, it's incumbent upon us to straighten it out. We have to do that. If we haven't done it up till now, we should do it. And we can only bind this board for the term of the members on it. And next time that there's different members, it may change. But right now, we probably need to make a statement on that so we can at least move forward with regard to that aspect of the taxes that are coming in and their use for capital improvements. And so I would suggest that if we're going to do that, that we might want to put that on the agenda for next month. If somebody wants to make a motion, that we do something with that 2.4 other than what we've already been doing with it. But I still would like us to see, us move forward with a master facilities plan that logically moves us forward with regard to these projects. If we need a workshop, I'm happy to set that up. And I hear it from a number of trustees, and so we'll move forward in setting up a workshop. But I would hope that we go into that workshop with the idea that this is a workshop to move us forward. That when we come out of it, we may not make any motions at that workshop, but we will come forward with some kind of a mutual understanding about how we can move forward with these, some or all of these projects.
Todd was first.
Todd?
Just a quick question. Joe, not to be picky, because these are very preliminary, numbers that we're just kind of throwing out there, filling some spaces, but they're real. I think they're realistic in what you're trying to present. When I look at the LCDC number, and I see a total of 15 million on the 3 pages, it shows the same line item on all 3 pages. It shows 2 million for the joint use facility, but then it shows 13 million for the sports complex. Now, right now, my understanding is that LCDC has a standing offer with parameters or constraints or conditions, whatever you want to call it, that we actually have to formally request, which by the end of this year, I believe, was the original timeline, for $10 million. So are we of a mind to think that that's a reasonable extension of their initial offer to get them to 13 million from 10?
I don't think that's reasonable, that that would cover the cost of our project. And if you look at the project as it was originally envisioned at Riverstone, then it probably was a reasonable figure. But we are now looking at a different piece of property that requires a different infrastructure. It requires acquisition of a right-of-way from the railroad, which the city is trying to help us with. And so, in essence, we are talking about a project that has different characteristics, different costs, and would be different. And so I used the 13 million as a placeholder, and it could go higher than that, but that's what I've used as a planning figure at this point.
If I may, one point. This is a speculative question to you, and you may have no answer, and that's okay if you don't. And if you have one, you may not be able to divulge that, depending on your discussions with Tony or whoever. But do we have a number, if you will, of what their capability is, as we look at that? I mean, I don't know what their upper threshold would be based on their projected tax revenues in the River District and that sort of thing.
Yeah, I have only heard rumors to that effect, nothing official, so I don't think I could honestly answer that for you.
But 13 may well be within their capability.
Yes, I think that's probably true.
Christine?
Mr. Chair, thank you. Mr. Chair, I do think it's appropriate for us to do a workshop, and I can sense your frustration. I understand that. I would just like to acknowledge, first of all, Joe, thank you for the hard work. I know this took a lot of effort, and it is a good a good starting point for us to, you follow along in a little more detail with us, maybe 2 or 3 times, and I'll get it. I think, just keep in mind, if I could tell you, that we don't live and breathe this all the time. You and our board chair do. So Ken might right away grasp everything on here. I need a workshop. And I don't want it to come across, though, as I'm non-supportive of moving forward. I just want to be sure about what I'm doing. And again, just getting it tonight, it makes it difficult for me to do that. But I am very supportive in moving forward and not shackling you every time we have this discussion.
And I appreciate that, and just so everyone knows, none of the comments made tonight by anyone, from my perspective, posed a barrier or were offensive or anything of that nature. This is a discussion, and I'm going to keep pressing forward with these projects until you tell me not to move forward anymore with them, because these projects are needed for the college. They're very critical to the college, and as Calvin Coolidge once said, persistence is the key to success. The world is full of educated derelicts. And so I'm just one of those educated derelicts that's going to be persistent.
Perfect.
Joe, I too appreciate this. I come from a world that surprises, 99.9% of surprises are bad. Thanks to Ron Dorn tonight, the average has gone down to 99.2.
There you go.
So we had a good surprise. The month before, where we had all of a sudden, we see a CTE campus on alongside a river view. We hadn't seen that before, so it's always a surprise is that the next day we end up having to defend, well, what are you guys doing building a CTE campus with a waterfront view? And then so when we get this and we hear the size of these numbers, we saw this at the same time the audience saw this, and I'm with Christy. This is a lot to get your arms around, and but we appreciate your hard work on this, and we're committed to advancing the school as much as you are.
Yeah. The just to be clear, the Excel spreadsheet went out with the board book. However, the plan in terms of the steps that I envision we need to go through, we did just recently finish up, and you haven't seen that previously. And sometimes we're a victim of timing here. So anyway.
Judy?
Thinking with what do we do next? Sounds like a workshop is what we need, and so we begin to do that. I don't want to lose sight of the fact, though, that we have one chance as a board to be in Boise in a month. And I would welcome some more strategy on how we use that time by storming Boise with our board for highlighting to folks. And Ron, you've commented before about we need to work with our own local legislators. That's true. But also I think we need to work at the state level and join with our other community college boards, because it's a theme I think we all have, that we need to look at professional technical, CTE, career technical.
There's pain and there's injury.
And I'm not sure how we make more happen when we're in Boise, but maybe we could be thinking about that a bit. Set aside the time for all of us, and it's a chunk of time to be down there and commit the time to talk to folks that may not get up here as often. And your suggestion of the governor, economic development people, is just a chance to ring the bell while we continue to work on this. I don't want to lose sight of that. And I think we all need to look at this and think about this as a long-term process, starting with. And that will, I think, help put scope on it. If you can put some more dates about when things get done so we can get the information and begin without necessarily knowing quite where we're going to end, because it may take some funding wizardry to figure out how far we get.
Any other comments or questions of Joe? Joe, thank you very much for the report. We will put together.
I have another topic, I'm sorry.
Joe?
Yes, I do.
Go ahead.
We are undertaking, and since Alex is sitting there with his head down, we are undertaking a review of our policies. I know he's part of that, amongst others. I was wondering what our progress was on that, which policies have been reviewed. We had the study done by the gentleman, and he selected some various ones that he specifically thought needed to be reviewed, and then you guys took that and advanced that and decided to do a review of every policy, it was my understanding.
Yep.
In a sequential order, and I was wondering how far we've progressed on that and where we're at and how many we've updated or changed, and for the board going to see any of that or any input or what?
The assemblies and the Senate have been working extremely hard reviewing those policies. And there's a procedure that's outlined in the college in terms of the flow of reviewing those policies, and that's being done. The goal was by the end of this academic year, June 30th, to have all those policies reviewed. We may have them all reviewed, but they won't necessarily all be back to you. But beginning in January, we will start bringing those to the board for approval or for your review and comment. And so we've made some pretty significant progress, I think. And we haven't been doing it in sequential number. We've been doing it in part taking the low-hanging fruit. For example, there are some policies that don't need any revision. And there are others that need minor modifications. And then there are other ones that are so out of date that they rise to the top of the heap, but are rather complex. And so it's a mix of what is being looked at. Does that accurately reflect, and I'm asking the constituents here if that works?
Yes.
Thank you.
Judy?
Percolating on the project that you shared with us tonight, and as I read through the item on the first page, the last one, develop space utilization analysis. I think some of those things are in place, have been a bit.
In fact, that's a very good question. Much of this data is available, but it is not organized or consolidated or cross-referenced. And so we do, I mean, Lita, Dr. Burns has looked at a space utilization from a classroom perspective.
Yep.
We do have data on our facility usage, but we don't have data on our facility conditions, for example. And so part of it is part of this is taking data that currently exists and assimilating it into one centralized point, and then determining what other information we need. And so that's a part of this.
And to follow up on that then, it may be as part of a workshop, some of the things that are already in place can begin to be shared, because as you did your program, these were just topics, and then you had a whole lot of information.
That's right, there were a lot of
that you read
subtasks
to us
to that.
that we haven't seen, so if we could have that full
Yeah,
laundry
and I
list.
didn't differentiate between what we had and what we
Right.
didn't have. I just wanted to present an overview of the major tasks that needed to be done to move these projects forward.
Which is helpful to me to have, to flesh out a little bit more in anticipation of a workshop, what might move us along a little bit faster on where are we with some of these, how soon can we have them done, and then what do we do with them is going to be the challenge of our workshop.
Any other comments? Joe, one other, just to follow up on Todd's questions about the changes to the policies and procedures. If those are going to be coming at the trustees in maybe small batches, it would be helpful, I think, consistent with some of the comments that you've heard here tonight, if we got those not a day before or even 3 or 4 days before, but weeks before.
Okay.
I mean, give it to us. It doesn't have to wait a packet for a meeting. As soon as they're available and ready for us to review, if you would send them to us so we can not only read them and try and digest them, but ask questions and get questions answered, so that when we are called upon in a public hearing to deal with them, that we've got a fairly good feeling about them.
Will do.
So if we could have them as quickly as they're available, that would be appreciated.
Okay, will do.
And I will move with dispatch to set up a workshop on the master plan for facilities planning.
And again, any ideas on how to use our time in Boise? There's a window there that is 30 days from now-ish. Either people we need to see, the time commitment we as a board need to know what it's going to be, so we can all get on board, and if we need some primer material to tune us up before we get there.
Well, my suggestion would be if you do have suggestions about ways we can use it, I'm talking to all of the trustees and anybody in the administration, if they have ways that we could use that time, convey it to myself or to Joe, and we'll see if we can't set something up.
Who do we go visit
And
with?
so, but we need the ideas, and then we'll see if we can't get them put in place.
Yep.
Mr. Chair, along those lines, the proposal that's going forward to JFAC, it'd be nice if we had that written for us in advance, too.
That's good.
But you might as well mention, we're actually, since we've talked about the trip several times, were you going to mention the exact time and date of when we're briefing? Or is now as good a time as any?
For JFAC, you mean?
JFAC. Yeah, we might as well mention it. 'Cause it's going to be on Monday, January 20th. And we're briefing from 09:50 to 10:30. So we're the third of the three junior colleges right after the break to be briefing. So if anybody who's watching or listening is curious.
And if I remember correctly, those are streamed live, and so we will be connected at the same time we are, although we're there. And so, right from the get-go, everybody can see what's happening, because it isn't just our presentation, it'll be the other two community colleges. And that's one of the best learning experiences, is what are the other stories being shared, and how do we coordinate amongst them? Because I think unless we do it as a unified group, we lose our effectiveness.
Yeah, I might, since we're on this topic, I don't know how we got on it, but we're on it. The JFAC deals with the financial aspects of legislation and funding and that sort of thing. The House and Senate education committees deal with policy. And so we're also presenting to the House and Senate education committees. I think it's on Tuesday morning, is that right? And so that's also part of our trip down to Boise. And there, again, President Dunlap, along with the presidents of the other community colleges, will be making presentations to those groups with regard to policy issues on education.
They may be live, too. They may be on television.
Joe, are you going to, I'm sorry, President Dunlap, are you guys going to do the joint presentation again?
Yes.
Good. I thought that went very
Just to
well.
the House and Senate.
Yeah, that's what I mean, to the House and Senate. But I thought that was very effective last year, and it seemed like the feedback was extremely positive.
But we will also have common slides, the first few set of slides for JFAC,
Okay.
indicating common issues and recommendations for them as well.
Yes, Judy?
Thinking about Boise, the JFAC, as you described, does some funding, but also professional technical funding comes through what sources?
There are two sources for professional technical funding. One is the Carl Perkins Act, which is federal funding, and that constitutes approximately 14% of our career and technical funding, and the remainder comes through state appropriations. So those two pieces form the career and technical funding for the institutions.
Different than JFAC?
Pardon me?
Different than JFAC? Different than JFAC, and the funding comes through the Joint Finance Committee choosing how that professional technical money gets distributed?
I believe it does.
Why, goodness
And
sakes.
that's, who needs to hear that funding for career and technical programs has not increased at all in the last number of years. And since that is such a high priority for the state, you'd think that the resources would reflect that.
We'll give them that opportunity.
Right.
Any other comments so we can let Joe sit down?
Hey, looks good up there.
Thank you very
Thank
much.
you, Mr. Chair.
The next item on the agenda is the legislative workshop, setting a date and a time. That would be a nice thing, but I don't think we've been able to do it, have we, Shannon? Been able to set a date and a time for a workshop. We're having a difficult time getting everybody together, quite frankly. So we still, if we're going to have a discussion before we get down to the legislative session to talk to them, we need to do it between now and the time that we go down for the JFAC meeting. Christie?
Mr. Chair, I would recommend that we try to do it on the same day that we do our workshop,
What workshop?
the one that you're going to set up.
I just don't know if we'll get that done before we get down to the legislative
Oh,
session.
okay, all right.
So
Therefore,
this seemed, the one on legislative funding is more
timely and
more pressing.
Okay,
I will still try and find a date for that. Next is the board chair's work report. Ron Dorn, would you please stand? Stand up. I just wanted you to say goodbye to everybody. And I wanted to tell you how much we have appreciated your service to NIC. I know the last time I talked to you, I asked if you're going to Montana and you got your blue jeans on. You're all set to cross the border into the big sky country. And we wish you the best. Thank you very, very much for your service to NIC. And that will be your last official act, probably. He's standing up and saying,
No, you get to sit down.
yes, thank you. I was going to report that we were going down to Boise in January to visit the legislature.
Novel
So,
concept.
we are in the process now of setting up meetings. We've talked about this in the past, but we're going to really try and get it done this year. Setting up joint meetings with the Tribal Council, with the Coeur d'Alene City Council, with the Post Falls City Council, and with Rathdrum, so that we can start to develop a better relationship in terms of ongoing discussions and relationships. And so we're going to try and get those 4 meetings set up. Probably the tribal meeting will be the first one. That seems to be the closest one on the horizon. We have been able to develop a workshop date for the tenure workshop, and it's going to be set for February the 11th, and it'll start at 5:30. And I listened to the report from the faculty, and in terms of format, I'm open to setting up a format, but my desire is to make something that provides equal access to both points of view, both pro tenure and those who are against tenure. And so what I have in mind as a structure is that those who oppose tenure or want to look at it from a different perspective should try and appoint no more than 3 people. We'll give them about 8 minutes apiece to make whatever points they feel are important that the trustees should consider in this workshop. We'll also have 3 people from the faculty and staff to also have about 8 minutes apiece to present their points of view. Any of those presenters should be in a position to answer questions from the Board of Trustees about anything they presented. I'm also going to ask Mark Lyons to give us a short presentation about the present status and the content of our tenure policy here at NIC, so we have that as a working model. I expect to have handouts for people, or at least a PowerPoint, that will show the fundamental policies and procedures dealing with tenure. I am hopeful that this discussion will be a constructive discussion, and that we'll be able, the parties from the different points of view will be able to air their points of view and have a constructive conversation. I do not anticipate any motions or any resolutions. If there is such a thing, it would follow any workshop. This workshop is going to be designed as a learning experience and a discussion experience. And if anybody has any changes or modifications or suggestions, I'd ask for them now. Ron?
One of the things I think would be helpful, Mr. Chairman, would be is to take a quantitative time, if it be 10 years, 25 years, how many instructors have been eligible for tenure and how many were granted tenure, so we get some relationship to those numbers.
Okay?
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
another thing that might be useful in this analysis would be some data from other institutions of higher learning, whether they be at the 4-year level or the junior college level, community college. I'd be curious to know how other schools apply the tenure process, or if they even have tenure. And I guess that could be both on the academic transfer side and the PTE side. I'd like to know where we fit in the scheme of things compared to some of our contemporaries.
Yeah, I mean, you're asking for data that may take some time to get.
Yeah, it may. I don't know if it's
Quite
too hard.
frankly.
If it's too hard to compile that, then maybe, I don't know where you go with that. Maybe there could be some that could be simply done, a few phone calls, some neighboring, maybe Washington, I don't know, Joe might have some contacts. I'd like to at least get a feel. I hear a lot of things, I heard a number of things when we were in Seattle, you know, different states, different colleges. There seems to be quite a variance of how these things go down and how trustees are appointed or elected, or whether there's tenure or not, and you know, a lot of different funding models. It obviously varies across the 50 states, so I'm not looking for that type of comprehensive comparative model, but I'd like to at least maybe get a feel for some of what's going on here in the West, you know, in the Northwest maybe. You know.
My fear is that if we open this up to trying to develop a lot of data from other institutions, that we may not get a story that's understandable, because tenure policies are not universal. They differ from institution to institution. They have a lot of variations in them.
Yes, sir.
And to try and find out from some institution that it's got some statistics and another that it's got some statistics with different fundamental tenure policies may not give us the kind of discussion I was hoping we would have. Let's talk about NIC's tenure policy. Is there a problem? If there is a problem, let's identify it. If there is not a problem, if there's benefits to it, let's discuss it. Let's find out about NIC. You can use examples from other areas, I suspect, but that always begets the question about whether or not their policies are really the same as ours. I would like to see this. We've promised everybody we'd do this, and I'd like to see us get it done in a constructive way that gives us whatever information we have focused on our policy. And if we want to come back later on and say we need to change our policy and adopt a policy that's being used by another college, then we can compare it directly with that other institution, I think. Is that all right with everyone? I mean, I'm happy to get as much data as I can lay my hands on, but quite frankly, you give us too much data, and I'm not sure it's going to be all that valuable. Judy?
Just thinking about that too, we need to be sure to understand semantics, because I think tenure has different interpretations. And so one of our fundamental starting points will be, what does our tenure mean? And I think, Mark, you've spoken before about tenure in the state of Idaho and how it's done, will help give us a baseline from which to see, you know, some of the comparisons may not be comparable because they are semantical differences. Is there such a word? Anyway.
There is now.
Okay, we just made one. All right, thank you.
All right. So anyway, the tenure workshop is set for February 11 at 5:30. In last month's meeting, or last month's minutes, we had indicated we would have a report from Jacqueline on the temporary facilities. Obviously, we do not have that on the agenda for this evening because Jacqueline asked for some additional time in order to put that together, so I expect to see it in our January meeting. It has not been forgotten. It's just they would like some additional time in order to put that together. One other thing that I'd like to say as part of my report, and I was tempted to do this right at the beginning, on our agenda every month is the mission statement on the top of it. And I look at that as I sit up here every month, and I remind myself about NIC's mission. And I think what I'm going to start doing is reading the mission statement at the beginning of every meeting. The mission statement reads, North Idaho College meets the diverse educational needs of students, employers, and the northern Idaho communities it serves through a commitment to student success, educational excellence, community engagement, and lifelong learning. And that's what we're all about. And I think I'm going to start adding that to the beginning of our meetings, unless there's some objection. With that, that ends my report, and we stand for remarks for the good of the order.
Mr. Chair.
Oh, let's start at the end.
I'm sorry. Go ahead, Ron.
I guess I would say is my first Christmas experience here at the college it's been a real education for me. I think this community is blessed to have a community college that is as incredible as this, and I just want to say Merry Christmas to my fellow colleagues here and wish you the best.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
Go ahead, Christie, ladies first.
Well,
That's all right. Go ahead. I'm going to trade back and
Okay,
forth.
all
Yeah,
right.
go ahead.
Oh, okay.
The boys.
I had two things, and one I thought you might have mentioned was just a note of our gathering with the folks down at the tribe. We had
Yeah.
four of us trustees and President Dunlap were able to go down there and share an event with the tribe and just furthering our relationship with those folks. So seeing that seemed to go very well.
Thank you.
It was really nice.
Very well. And I got one more thing, sir, if I may. As many of you know, we have an outstanding wrestling team. One of the things that they do is they host the tri-state tournament. And you can tell that wrestlers aren't number guys because tri-state generally means Washington, Oregon, Idaho, and Montana. And there are teams from other states, so yeah, I know. Yeah, exactly. But anyway, it's one of the most prestigious wrestling events in the nation. It draws a number of state champions. And anyway, we're hosting that, and it's coming up. And then one of the things, I think we're all going to get an invite. I think Al mentioned that at the Booster Club meeting. So you all might hear about this again in an email. But before the finals on Saturday night at about 5 o'clock, there's going to be a ceremony because they're going to dedicate the wrestling room to John Owen. And so I intend to be there myself. I hope to be there. And like I said, I think there's going to be an invitation, but I know they'd love to see the other trustees. I'm sure President Dunlap's probably going to be there. I don't know how that's working, but
What's the date?
but Pat Wickham will acknowledge John prior to the finals at Tri-State, and then there'll be a plaque, and that'll go up on the wrestling room. And to honor John and his tremendous career here as a coach and the national championships that they won, the many national championships. So just thought I'd mention that. Anybody can make that. If you know John, have a relationship with John, or supported the wrestling program, that's quite an honor. And so that'd be neat. And of course, Tri-State, they're just some really outstanding wrestling if you're a fan of the sport at all. So a little plug for the event and for the honoring of J.O.
What's the date?
This coming weekend, I believe.
Oh,
Yeah.
Saturday.
It's Friday night and Saturday
Oh, yeah.
all day. So the
But the-
preliminary rounds are Friday, start
Presentation, I don't know.
on
Do you have a
Friday.
time for the presentation?
Well, I understood it should be about 5 o'clock.
Saturday night.
Saturday evening, about 5 o'clock, and that's supposed to be, precede the finals.
Thank you.
Like I said, wrestling will be Friday and then Saturday.
Christmas parties, Todd. We're all locked in. Sorry.
That's all right.
Some of us don't quite have the expansive social calendar that you have, Christy.
Christie.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So this is a topic I wanted to get back to. President Dunlap spoke to it in his presentation briefly, and that is Post North. So not all of you have been in the loop, the email loop. I say trustees have not all been in the loop, and I'd like to make sure we get you in the loop, and I'll take some responsibility in that and forward you some emails. But there's been some very informative emails coming back from members of local law enforcement that have been working hard on the one of them's on the Post Council himself. The other has been sort of our representative of local law enforcement, Chief Scott Ho from Post Falls. And he has worked hard with the college, with Joe, with Mike Myers and Gain Clifford, Mike Berg. Everyone's worked hard to try to keep the door open with Post, keep trying to collaborate, keep trying to keep the relationship there, and help them understand how important this academy is to the north and that we need their cooperation. So he's not been so successful, as hard as he's tried. And the email that have been back and forth have been fairly informative that there just really isn't the level of cooperation we would like to see with Post. So the other day, I was privy to an email that came from Sheriff Rainey from Ada County, and he is what I think he is the chairman of the Post Council. And his email was very detailed. He had a few comments about the college in particular that I'd certainly like. I don't know, Joe, if you saw that.
No, I
You
haven't.
need to see that. And then the trustees need to see it as well. This issue is now to the point where you heard that Sheriff Wolfinger has drafted some legislation, and John Getty is hoping to carry that for us. And George Eskridge has been very helpful in writing letters and reaching out to the colonel, and certainly didn't hear anything back, but did get something email from Sheriff Rainey the other day. Now, I can't say for certain that this occurred. This is what I'm being told, and I hope it's not. I hope it wasn't uttered this way. But this might be some of the things we're up against. When the sheriff heard that we may propose legislation in the north, rumor has it is he said, well, let them try. We have more legislators in the south. And if he didn't say that, then good, I'm glad you didn't, Sheriff, if you're watching. But if he did, that's just the kind of north versus south, south versus north stuff that gets us nowhere. And we need this academy in the north just like they do in the south, just like they do in Pocatello, just like all over the state. And so those are disappointing kind of statements, and it doesn't need to be that way. So I want you all to be aware of what's going back and forth. And when we are in Boise, aside from our JFAC presentation, we have some other work to do, because it's only right and fair that North Idaho College continues their academy and we get the support we deserve.
That was mentioned today at the legislative luncheon at the Chamber of Commerce. Senator Getty wasn't able to attend, but there was a statement read, and he mentioned that as being one of the legislative items that he was taking forward. So that word is getting out a little bit anyway.
Judy, did you have anything?
Just, I think the wrap-up was good holidays, safe holidays, and see you all next year.
So I would also like to join in wishing everyone a happy and a safe holiday, and we will all see you in the new year. We're adjourned.